All right. Thank you for being with us. I'm Terry Kimball. I'm president and CEO here at the Chandler Chamber. And our diversity, equity, and inclusion team committee they are absolutely rock stars in what they have in store for you today. And so without spilling some of that, this has been a very, very passionate project for me over the past several years. And this committee has taken this to a completely new level. And we are so pleased with that. So this wonderful event would not be possible without our sponsors. I want to do a huge shout out to PayPal, Toyota Financial Services, Intel, and Wells Fargo. They are true champions in this diversity, equity, and inclusion space, and I want to thank them for their efforts on this. Today, we have a wonderful way to respect the beliefs of others is to learn about them. And this morning, we are here to do just that. Despite the circumstances from this year, we are excited to host. This is our third annual faith-based panel virtually. First time virtually, the other two were in person. And we're excited to have you join us here today. And at this time, I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Tyler Conaway with PayPal. Tyler has been a member of the financial fraud and risk management community for over 16 years. He currently serves as a policy leader within PayPal's Global Commercial Risk Management Group. Tyler also serves as a chairperson for PayPal Pride's Global Steering Committee in the capacity of Pride and has been a leader. He's actually been the co-chair of the Chamber's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. So Tyler, I just want to thank you and Dr. Bill Crawford for your efforts in taking on and championing this charge with our business community, because we know this is so important to our business community. So Tyler, I'm going to let you take it away from here.
Thank you so much, Terry. And really special thanks to Terry and the Chamber for giving a platform to all the diverse communities of Chandler. It is very important to our business community, and it is really our pleasure to make this part of our December tradition every year to bring in and celebrate the diverse faiths that make up Chandler. We know faith more than ever in 2020 has probably been an important hallmark for people of a spiritual center, and we really wanted to highlight those organizations and individuals that really help contribute to that sense of faith and belonging here in our community. So with that, I'm very excited to introduce our panel today. We've really assembled, as Terry mentioned, just really what I consider a rock star group of individuals really passionate about their faith community. So with that, I'll get in and introduce each of our panelists and give you a brief bio on each. Our first panelist is Rabbi Mikhail Baio. Rabbi Baio was born in Milan, Italy, and has, to my jealousy, lived in many, many awesome places in the world. Lived in England, France, and Israel. Rabbi Baio has earned 3 rabbinical ordinances in Israel. Focused his graduate level studies at universities in Israel and in the United States in political science, Jewish history, and Jewish philosophy. Rabbi Baio began his career in the toy industry and then spent many years in high tech and renewable energy before transitioning his entrepreneurial enterprise and passion to the Jewish nonprofit space. Rabbi Baio has served as executive director of Boston University Hillel, as the rabbi of BU Hillel, as well as the Jewish chaplain for Boston University. Subsequently, he was appointed Chief Development Officer for Hillel of Georgia, overseeing fundraising efforts for 12 colleges in the state of Georgia. Since November of 2015, Rabbi Baio is the CEO of the East Valley Jewish Community Center in Chandler, Arizona. And under his leadership, EVJCC has expanded its program offerings from 3 to 40 programs a year, reaching over 20,000 engagements in 650 programs, events, and sessions. Rabbi Baio is a published author, university lecturer, and sought-after speaker on theology, bioethics, Zionism, Jewish history, and law. Rabbi Baio loves connecting with people and creating meaningful relationships that help the individual and community, tearing down the barriers of differences. Our next panelist is Brent Hatchett. Brent serves on the staff at Cornerstone Christian Fellowship. He's also started an online campus ministry at ASU called The Outlet. Prior to serving at Cornerstone, he served as the assistant pastor at Sweet Home Missionary Baptist Church in Miami, Florida. He's married to his wife, Shannon, for 8 years. They have one son and a daughter that will join us in 2021, due in January. Next, we have Peggy Schlesinger. Peggy is a member of the Baha'i faith, who are followers of Baha'u'llah, glory of God in English. As a young person, she was interested in many different religions, although Presbyterian at the time. She became a Baha'i in 1973. The Baha'i faith does not have any clergy, but she served many years on the local spiritual assembly, an elected administrative body. It is her hope to raise awareness of the importance of unity and diversity, which requires us to eliminate all forms of prejudice. She has served on Chandler for Our City, the Chandler Diversity Advisory Group, Chandler for Change. She's one of our organizers of the Chandler Baha'i Race for Unity, which is a family fun walk-run annual event, which we hope will resume next year. By profession, her first career was as a teacher for the hearing impaired. She received her Master's of Business Administration at the University of New Mexico and worked for Sandia National Laboratories for several years. And she moved to Chandler 27 years ago, working for Intel Corporation as an enterprise architect until she retired. And next we have Jane Anderson. Jane was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area. And after earning a degree in economics from Brigham Young University, she worked in New York City as an investment banking analyst on Wall Street, and then for the New York City Public and International Affairs Office of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She received a master's degree in political science from the City University of New York. For the last 7 years, she's taught a course about politics, economics, and religion as an online instructor for BYU Idaho. She's been married to her husband, John, for 22 years and has 4 amazing children ranging from 10 to 19, including identical twins with special needs. And rounding out our panel today is Imam Omar Tawil. Imam Omar Tawil is a graduate of DePaul University with a bachelor's degree in religious studies and is currently pursuing a master's in administration in Islamic studies and Christian-Muslim relations from Hartford University Seminary. He's pursued his traditional study of the Islamic sciences with scholars in the Middle East and the United States. He currently lives in the Phoenix Valley, where he serves as an imam for the Islamic Community Center of Tempe, Arizona, and as a university chaplain for Muslim students at ASU. And audience, please note we will have a question and answer session after the panel. If you do have questions, go ahead and post them in the chat, and moderators will organize these by topic, and we'll get to what questions we have time for at the end. So with that, we'll hop in and get started and start to engage our panel here today with a few questions. So really the first thing we want to do to build that awareness is give us a brief history of your faith group in Chandler. And Rabbi Bayo, if it's all right, we'll start with you.
Thank you very much, Tyler. Thank you very much to Terry and Carly from the Chamber of Commerce. This is the second time that I am participating in this panel, so I'm very excited to be here. So the history of the Jewish community in Chandler, I'm not an expert on it, but I believe that it starts at least, as far as I know, about 40, 50 years ago. There's been already, I believe that the Jewish community in Chandler was more connected to the Phoenix Jewish community that has been here since the establishment of the state, for sure. I can tell you that our center has been here for the last 40 years. Not in the same location, but in the East Valley for the last 40 years. And in fact, my assistant has been working for the Jewish Community Center for the last 40 years. So that I can tell you. And she reminds me that every day. The Jewish community in Chandler and in the East Valley in general, they're very they live in a huge geographical area, differently than in other cities like in Phoenix or Scottsdale, where you can find the Jewish community living in more or less in close proximity. Here in the East Valley, by the nature of the East Valley, I think people just choose to live a little bit further away from each other. There are there are two synagogues in the Chandler, one ultra-Orthodox and one conservative. And then there is some other synagogues. There's one synagogue in Tempe, one in Mesa, and one in Gilbert, and also one in Sun Lake. Those are the ones that I'm familiar with. But as far as a Jewish organization, we are seen, and we are the largest Jewish organization in the East Valley, and we are the second largest Jewish organization in the entire Greater Phoenix area.
Wow. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Brent, we'll pass the mic over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler. And thank you to all of you who took your time out of this morning to kind of join us on this panel discussion. Super excited. So just a little bit of history about Cornerstone Church. We actually just celebrated 25 years as a church. Cornerstone was planted in 1995 by Lynn and Lisa Winters, who serve as our lead pastors. And it's just been a phenomenal experience to be a part of that team. Part of that journey is 1995. They started with literally with just 25 people at a Bible study. It was them and two other couples who walked alongside them. And since then, pre-COVID days, the church has grown exponentially to a regular weekly attendance of right around about 5,000 to 5,500 people a weekend. So it has been something that is truly special. But I think what makes Cornerstone so unique is not the fact that they have just built up Cornerstone Church. They have actually been responsible in aiding in what we call church planting. And they have helped to plant an additional 21 other churches throughout Arizona. They've also assisted to plant churches in Texas, and they've also planted a few churches even over in Africa. So, Cornerstone has been a pretty good staple within this community, and I'm just happy to be a part of the team.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for sharing. Peggy, if I can turn over to you.
All right. Thank you so much also for inviting me. I have enjoyed these very much, and I appreciate being a part of it. With the Baha'i faith, because of the fact it's a relatively young religion, I wanted to kind of give a little background to the faith, in that it began in actually 1844 in Persia or Iran. Our prophet founder is Baha'u'llah, which means glory of God. We basically believe in the concept of progressive revelation, where God is an unknowable essence beyond our comprehension. And so you kind of say, can't know God, but God sends messengers over time to help us understand more about what to guide us and figure out what we should be doing. And these include all of the ones that we know about: Abraham, Krishna, Moses, Buddha, Zoroaster, Jesus, Muhammad, the Bab, which means the gate, and Baha'u'llah. They all have kind of the same message of love thy neighbor as thyself. That's universal. But a lot of times they'll bring different social messages because they're talking to the people of the time, and a lot of times in a particular place. So Baha'u'llah brought the message of unity, and as well as world peace. And we don't expect that to be happen by magic, but rather through our own spiritual development and improvement of our character. If we develop an understanding and compassion for everyone in the world, obviously that changes the world and it becomes better. The Baha'i faith in America started in 1892, where there was a teacher who came to New York, and that actually became kind of an area where many people became Baha'is. And then in 1899, someone came to Chicago. Now, it turns out Baha'u'llah and his family were imprisoned most of their lives. Baha'u'llah actually died a prisoner in 1892, but in 1908, Abdu'l-Baha, which means servant of the glory, that was his son. He was freed by the Young Turk Revolution, and so was able to actually come to America in 1912, where he traveled from New York to California and back. Unfortunately, he did not come to Chandler. But in the 1970s, there were Baha'is here, and they elected a spiritual assembly in 1979, which it requires basically to have at least 9 people in an area. And as Tyler mentioned, that's an administrative body that takes care of the affairs of the community because we don't have any clergy. The concept of that is that if everyone is educated, which is a compulsory requirement, everybody can read the writings for themselves and decide what they believe is truth. In the spiritual assembly, though, that's elected without nominations or electioneering. People just vote for the 9 people that they think are the best qualified to serve. And we believe in equality of all peoples. So if you look actually at our assembly right now, we have men, women, and people of color all in the spiritual assembly. So it's quite a diverse group.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Jane, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about the Church of Latter-day Saints in Chandler.
Sure. So the first kind of members that settled here in the Valley occurred in 1877. And the first congregation was in 1912, with the first building being built at Monroe and 7th Street, Phoenix. There's lots of members of the church in the state. We're approaching about 380,000 in the state of Arizona. Within Chandler alone, we have about 17,000 members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with about 35 congregations. From Washington, D.C., and I can tell you there's not as many members of the church where I was raised, so it's a unique environment to have so many members of the church here. And we did celebrate the dedication of the temple nearby in Gilbert in 2014, which is a very place of worship for our members, and we're excited to have that in the Valley. But I'm excited to be on this panel today. I had the chance in college to study abroad in Jerusalem for 5 months, and that was where I really developed a love for all faiths and all the good that people are doing. So I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much. And Imam Omar.
Good morning, everybody. So Muslims in Arizona or within Chandler, as Rabbi Bayo said, he's not an expert about Judaism in the history of Chandler. I'm not an expert of Islam and Muslims in Chandler as well. But what I do know, because I've moved here about 2.5 years ago from my home city of Chicago, what I have been able to find out on my own and through asking a lot of people who've been here a lot longer than I have is that the mosques that are in Chandler currently are recent, but they kind of are expansions of what has started in Phoenix and in Tempe. And in Tempe, you do have one of the oldest mosques in the state of Arizona, which is the Islamic Community Center of Tempe, right next to ASU's campus. It was built by students in the early 80s. And then a lot of these students who have thus remained in the Phoenix Valley, they were graduate students, undergrad students, they became professionals, they married, had children. The community just started to grow and grow, and it actually has had to go to all the corners of the Phoenix Valley, particularly because of how Tempe looks right now. I understand that around ASU used to be very residential looking maybe 10 years ago, and now it's just a booming downtown area. So a lot of families have very naturally just kind of moved away to more quieter pastures and maybe even greener ones as well out in Chandler and Gilbert. So there are actually right now 3 mosques and a new one that just opened up at the Chandler Gilbert area, where that's kind of gray, where you don't know if it's Chandler or Gilbert. It's one of them, definitely, for sure. So you have about 3 mosques that are there. One of them, which is the largest, which is the Islamic Center of the East Valley. And you have another one that's in South Chandler called Masjid Mustafa. And you have another that is very close to the first one that I mentioned on Alma School. It's called Masjid as-Salam, or the place of worship of peace. So you do have a growing Muslim presence within the city of Chandler itself. And you do have it really, kind of having its own inception separate from other mosques. But the biggest community, the Islamic Center of the East Valley, has kind of been a younger brother or a younger sister of the mosque that is in Tempe and the mosque that is in Phoenix, where a lot of people have just kind of, okay, I can't commute 45 minutes or half an hour every time I want to go to the mosque, so we'll just build our own mosque over here. And I always hear great things about what their activities, except for the last few months, which I'm sure many of us are struggling with when it comes to religious gatherings and congregations and activities through COVID. Everything's gone virtual, like this meeting. I was on a panel like this before, but this is the first time we're doing it online.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's a pleasure.
Thank you so much for that. And yes, we definitely wanted to continue with the panel. It's a very important topic for us to broach. So like everyone, we'll plot ahead virtual. With that, I think we do have an opportunity, given the month we're in and kind of our overall emphasis across America on celebration, as we start celebrating many holidays and many different traditions, be they of a religious nature or non-religious nature. Would love to learn a little bit more about the important holidays of your faith and what kind of celebration activities take place, and kind of switch the order up here a little bit and say, I'll start with Brent. Kind of tell us about some of the important holidays of your faith and what kind of celebration activities take place.
Yeah, so in the Christian faith, we have two predominant holidays. The biggest one being Easter, which of course is celebrating the resurrection of our Savior, which is Jesus Christ. As the story goes, unfortunately, he was crucified on a hill at Calvary on a Friday, stayed in the tomb on Saturday, and if I was at a Black Baptist church, I'd say early Sunday morning, he got up. But that's the story of Easter. And then, but because we're in the Advent season, the other faith, or sorry, not faith, but celebration, of course, is Christmas, which is the birth of Jesus. And I tell people that it's much more when we sit and we share the story of the birth of Jesus. I like to tell people that it's much more than a story, but it's actually was a plan. What many people don't realize is that Jesus' birth was prophesied 700 years earlier in the book of Isaiah in chapter 7. Matter of fact, if we look at Matthew 1:23, it says, look, the virgin will conceive a child, she will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. That exact same passage was spoken in Isaiah chapter 14. And we celebrate Christmas because it's literally God himself incarnate, coming in the flesh in the form of Jesus. So we no longer have to have this separation of worshiping this guy that we haven't seen or can't touch or can't be around. But it was pretty awesome over 2,000 years ago, his birth, because now he's here with us in the flesh. And since then, he's left us, but our expectation is that he's coming back again. But he's given us the Holy Spirit as a comforter. So those are the two major holidays that we have, which is Easter and Christmas. So it's a big deal for us. So we're excited in our household about the Christmas season.
Thank you very much. Peggy, I'll switch the mic over to you. Tell us about some of the holiday traditions for the Baha'i faith.
We actually don't have any big celebrations during the month of December, but our biggest celebration is actually 12 days in April. It's called the Festival of Festivals. So obviously a celebratory time. In 1853, Baha'u'llah, who was the prophet founder, as I mentioned, he was put in a prison called the Black Pit, and it's as bad as it sounds, for 4 months, and then he was banished to Baghdad. Well, when he got to while he was in Baghdad, people started really, liking him, and he was influencing people and in a very positive way, along with the local officials. Well, the government didn't like that, so they again banished him. This time they banished him to Constantinople, which is, of course, Istanbul, later to Adrianople, and then finally to Akka. But right when he was being banished from Baghdad, he was on an island for 12 days in the Tigris River. So it's an island in the Tigris, which is right there, Baghdad. And that's when he declared his mission. So we call that the Festival of Festivals. And obviously it's a very joyous time. There's food and big parties and stuff like that. We have special celebrations specifically on the 1st, the 9th, and the 12th days. So, and after that, of course, then he was sent off to Constantinople. We actually have 9 holy days that we suspend work. The 1st, 9th, and 12th are 3 of those. Although I have to tell you about my 2 personal favorites, which is one is we have a different calendar than the common calendar. We have 19 months of 19 days each. You do the math, and that's 361 days. So you end up with 4 to 5 days left over, depending upon whether it's leap year. And that's called the Yamiha, or intercalendar days. And during that time, we have parties and we give gifts and perform acts of kindness and service to others. That's all part of that. So that occurs at the end of February, which is the right before the last month of our year. And that last month we have, that's our fasting time. Oh, I did want to tell you before I move off of Yamiha, one of the things we don't have is we don't have particular traditions, but we have a family tradition. And so for us, we have, I have an example here, Yamiha banners. And in our family, and you'll notice there's pockets in here. The pockets are for the presents. So, but this is all about somebody in the family. So kind of, it allows you a time to also kind of think about what are the beautiful qualities that other people have in your family. So then after that, we have a month of fasting. So it's 19 days of fasting from sunrise to sunset. And then at the end of that, that's actually now the beginning of our new year, which is the spring equinox. And that's called Nowruz, or New Year's. And again, we have parties with food and dancing. We don't drink alcohol, so we don't have any of that, but we do have still a really good time.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. Jane, I will throw it over to you.
Well, similar to Brent, being a member of the Christian faith, definitely the most important holidays are Christmas and Easter. Easter holds a very special place in our home. Having a child that is blind and has cerebral palsy and epilepsy, we are ever looking forward to the resurrection and perfection of his body. I wanted to quote from a church leader named Joseph Wirthlin. It holds my sentiments about Easter. It says, each of us will have our Fridays, those days when the universe itself seems shattered and the shards of our world lie littered in pieces. We will all experience broken times when it seems we can never be put together. We will all have our Fridays. But I testify to you in the name of one who conquered death, Sunday will come. No matter our desperation, no matter our grief, Sunday will come. In this life or the next, Sunday will come. So the resurrection of Jesus Christ is central to our faith. One thing I would add, this isn't necessarily a day, but it is something that's important, is every first Sunday of the month, we denote it Fast Sunday. And members of the congregation are asked to fast for 2 meals. And then they're asked to take the money they would have spent on those meals and donate it to the church. And it's used feed the needy or address other needs of people who might have financial distress. And I have found that practice of regular fasting every month gives me the chance not only to understand my mind's ability to conquer appetites of my body, but it also gives myself and my family the chance to think of somebody else. Oftentimes when my kids are complaining about how hungry they are, I ask, are you fasting with a purpose? So we're asked to specifically pray and think for someone that day who might need extra guidance or help from God. So that's an important part of our faith as well.
Thank you very much. Imam Omar.
Yes, so in the Islamic faith, we typically have 2 religiously observed holidays or times of holidays. One of them is during the month of Ramadan and at the end of the month of Ramadan. So for 30 days, we fast from sunrise to sunset. And its objective is many. One of them is to create empathy. Another is to discipline the self. If we can control our most basic appetites, then what are we then capable of throughout the entire year and indeed throughout our own lives? So it's really a message to ourselves spiritually and religiously, and even throughout our daily activities. what we are actually capable of when we actually, dedicate it for God, and then what can we do for the rest of humanity outside of that. So at the end of the month of Ramadan, we have something called Eid, which is celebration or a holiday. And that Eid is really a celebration or demarcation of the month of Shawwal, which is the end of the month of Ramadan. And at the end of the month, Muslims gather. There's a prayer service that we all take part in. But before the prayer service is actually, instituted or done, there is a donation that is obligatory for each member of each household. So the head of a household, the father or the mother, will pay a certain amount of money per person in their household, which is to be given to the poor. So if someone reaches a certain threshold of wealth, which is generally about $5,200 of savings or more, then they give a particular amount in order to donate to the needy, which then gets distributed almost immediately after. And the Muslim community has committees of of people who actually distribute that money. The second holiday is, again, it's kind of a season, and then it's at the end of the season. So it actually begins with the months, the days of Dhul Hijjah, which are the times where many Muslims around the world are traveling towards Mecca to do Hajj or the pilgrimage. We had an interesting Hajj this year. Only locals, only people who lived in and around Mecca and in the country of Saudi Arabia were allowed to attend. So it went from a capacity of about 4 to 5 million to a few thousand, or maybe 10,000 or something like that. So it was definitely an interesting international event that was very underwhelming, but nonetheless inspiring that it still took place. So you do have at the end of Hajj another Eid or celebration which takes place, which commemorates the essence of Hajj, or the sacrifice that people give on Hajj, which Muslims believe to be following in the footsteps of the Prophet Abraham and his son Ishmael. Now, this happens all over the world, and these are the two religious holidays. Throughout the year, you do have many Muslims from around the world celebrating their own cultural holidays, right? Where it's not necessarily specific, something that is mandated by religion, but because of how diverse the Muslim world is, or the Islamic population is, you do have many cultural festivities and holidays that take place throughout the year. One of the examples is something that Peggy actually mentioned, Nowruz, which is the Persian New Year calendar that is celebrated by Muslims as well, and is celebrated by Baha'is. So this is something that is very dear to Muslims who are in a Persian influenced culture. It's something very significant in countries like Turkey, Persia, or Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India as well. And then you even have certain things like the Mawlud, which is the month that the Prophet was born in. We don't have an authentic enough report to know which exact day he was born on, but there is a month that is authentically enough proven that this is when he was born. So it just becomes a month of commemoration, a month of revisiting the life of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And then there are also other, events, which is similar to our Jewish brothers and sisters. We commemorate by fasting and actually dedicating a night of worship to, and it's not an obligation, but it is a recommendation for the day that Moses saved the children of Israel from the Pharaoh, when they escaped the clutches of that form of oppression. So it becomes a day of real solemn reflection, appreciation, gratitude, and even a night of worship. And it's preceded by a day of fasting. So we have these holidays, or these times of celebration, and these times of religious, I guess you say, observances, but only 2 of them are obligatory, whereas the others, Muslims really do it depending on their cultural sensibilities or their own personal and individual preferences, and so on and so forth. So by no means is Islam going to be monolithic in their expression of faith, except with these 2 holidays, which then get celebrated differently. Particularly me, coming from the Middle East, it's a day of a lot of gift giving and a lot of time spent visiting family. And by the end of the day, we're exhausted because we have probably visited, 15, 20 different households, uncles, aunts, cousins, grandparents, and so on and so forth. And then, that's about it, basically. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And Rabbi Beo.
Yes, thank you. It's fascinating to hear all the different traditions and to compare and contrast similarities and differences. So, as my wife says, we celebrate Thanksgiving once a week. Every Shabbat, every Friday evening, and Shabbat lunch, we have we celebrate Shabbat. And that is, I would say, the most important holiday in the Jewish calendar. And just because it comes every week does not make it less important. Actually, it is more important. So we have Shabbat, which is very important. And then similarly to what the Imam said, because of the diverse expression of Judaism that you find throughout the world, it's difficult to clearly define what are religious holidays versus cultural holidays in Judaism. Judaism is the oldest of the Western monotheistic religions, and so we got a long, long history. And so all of our holidays have a cultural aspect to it, and you can also add a religious aspect to it, and it's very difficult to say this is only religious, it's only cultural, and where is the history of it, etc. But there's only 1 month that does not have one of these type of celebrations. Happens to be the month that I was born, and I think that it was so ordained because my birthday is a holiday on its own. Other than that, almost every month we have some form of celebration or fasting. Celebrations that have to do with the type, the month. A lot of our celebrations are connected to the agricultural aspect of the year. But having said that, the most important holidays are 3 major holidays that we celebrate besides the New Year, which is Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot, which is about a month long of celebration. Then we have Passover, which reminds us of when the prophet Moses took us out of Egypt. And then we have Shavuot, which happens about 40 days after Passover, where we celebrate the receiving of the 10 Commandments. Again, we have lots of other holidays throughout the year, but that is what I would like to share now. During this time of the year, also we have a special holiday called Hanukkah, which I invite everybody to join us on December 17 live. December 17, we're going to record here the celebration of Hanukkah. It's the lighting of the candles, and the Hanukkah represents in a certain way, it's the old story of the good over evil, of tolerance over intolerance. And I invite everybody to join us virtually on December 17 at 5 p.m. Last but not least, I also would like to say that even though often I hear people say that, Christian Jewish values, I think that in reality, Judaism has much more in common with Islam than with Christianity, especially in the way that we understand God, in the way that we understand the uniqueness and non-corporeality and non-anthropomorphism of God. So different than the way that Brett was explaining that in his tradition, in the Christian tradition, one of the important aspects was that God impersonified himself in a person. In Islam and in Judaism, that could never happen. That is, for us, anthropomorphism or anthropopathic expressions of God are antithesis to everything that Judaism stands for.
Thank you. All right. So, as faith leaders, I know that you often interact with members of the public, folks of either maybe non-faith or different faiths, and you will often be faced with what people's conceptions of your faith are. I think in the spirit of making sure all the faiths here today are understood, let's talk about some of the biggest misconceptions you've had or observed over time with your faith. And kind of throw it out, starting over again. Peggy, if you want to take the lead on this one, and we'll go around to the panel again.
All right. With the Baha'i faith, one of the biggest misconceptions is that there's a thought that we're an offshoot of Islam, which is not true. In Iran, the Baha'is have been tortured and basically brutally killed since its inception. There was 200,000 people that were killed within the first 10 years. The persecutions, by the way, continue today, particularly in Iran, where people are imprisoned, their goods or property are confiscated, they are denied jobs, they can't work in the government. And if somebody discovers somebody's a Baha'i, they may encourage the employer to fire that person. And they're denied entrance to colleges. Now they actually kind of fudge that because the fact that's considered a human rights violation. So what they'll do sometimes is they'll allow a certain number of Baha'is to actually enter college, but they will not give them a degree. So obviously that limits one's capabilities of earning and stuff like that. But in this particularly became heightened in 1974 with the revolution. So at that point in time, Baha'is tried to escape Iran, and I mean like escape. But because of that, we actually have a relatively large population in the US, and we have actually relatively large population in Chandler. We do believe in the unity of all religions and that they all came from the same, and that God has been sending messengers over time. So there's a connection with all other religions, and that we believe that we're working toward world peace, and which goes along with the right way to treat each other. But they're separate religions. And I would actually suggest that they're different installments of the same religion, and yet, so which makes them the same different. The message that was given a lot of times was geared to the people that where the messenger came. We believe that we are one family and we should treat each other with respect and equality. So that is regardless of religion. But we do believe that God's message has become more refined over time. Baha'u'llah brought the message of unity. He was very specific about the equality of genders and the need to eliminate prejudice. He also brought the concept of science and religion must be in harmony. Because of the fact science without religion creates materialism and greed, which we've seen a lot of. And religion without science, though, creates superstition. If you look at the history of the world and religions, these were actually very new concepts at that point in time. Now you kind of say, well, some of this stuff you kind of say, well, but of course, but that wasn't true when Baha'u'llah came. So it was revolutionary at that point. But as humanity develops, we can see the world differently. If you think about it, we no longer find slavery or torture acceptable. People found it was entertainment to view torture or execution. And it's like, today we know that is, so you kind of say we have, even though sometimes it's hard to believe, we really are improving and moving forward. But basically, the Baha'i faith is another installment in God's progressive plan to gradually develop the earth that we want to live on, not the one that we necessarily live on today, but the one where we want to live, and where people live in peace and harmony and have enough to live comfortably. Through the development of virtues of truthfulness, trustworthiness, and compassion. These are the things that we are working to develop.
Thank you very much. Jane, I'll pass it over to you.
This is a softball question for my faith. As members of the Church of Jesus Latter-day Saints, a lot of people will call us Mormon. And so a big misconception is that we are Christian. And while we do have additional scripture to the Bible, which is the Book of Mormon, we do not worship Mormon, but we have focus on Jesus Christ. And our prophet today, which is maybe a distinction, we believe that we have modern day prophets on the earth, again, are people that we do not worship, but simply view as a leader and a guide that God has sent us. But he recently thought it was very important that we actually make radical changes in a lot of the way that we interact with the public, again, to put centrality on Jesus Christ. And so the Mormon Tower, which many people have known for a long time, was renamed, and it was called, it's now the choir at Temple Square. Even the website, which used to be LDS.org for Latter-day Saints, has been changed to the Church of Jesus, or sorry, churchofjesus.org. So little changes like that over time we're hoping that that message will get out how important Jesus Christ is to our faith. And I can tell you that we just sent a son on a mission. So at age 18 or 19 years old, men and young women will go and dedicate. It's really a tithe, if you think about it. At age 18 to 20, they'll dedicate 2 years of their life, which, you know, is 5% of their life to God. My son is actually named Samuel. We had trouble having kids. So after the biblical story, we named him Samuel. And like Hannah, my son to the Lord in June, and he is serving, specifically speaking Spanish right now in Oklahoma City. He's currently in Tulsa. And I can tell you there would be no other motivation for him to give up 2 years of his life other than the fact that he has seen the effects of the atonement of Jesus Christ in the life of my family. He's seen the strength that it gives us as we push through trial, and he wants to share that joy with other people. So that is a misconception that we're working on. It's a big misconception, but absolutely Jesus Christ is to our faith, and we hope that people get that message as we make these changes.
Thank you very much. Rabbi Bayo.
Unfortunately, I think that there has been over history many misconceptions about Jews, which led to anti-Semitism that has been around since the first Jew has been around. So we don't lack misconceptions when it comes to Jews or Judaism. Pick the topic and you will find a misconception there. Having said that, what I find often a misconception that bothers me more than others at this particular time of my life is that all Jews they come from Western or Eastern Europe, and that we are all white Caucasian, and that is absolutely not true. Judaism has its source and its origin in the Middle East. We are from the Middle East. Personally, I am from the Middle East. My family has lived in the Middle East forever. I don't consider myself a white Caucasian Jew. I consider myself a Middle Eastern Jew. And so I think that this is one of the misconceptions that I find in America to be very prevalent, that all Jews come from Western and Eastern Europe, and that's not factually true. Even today in Israel, the overwhelming majority of Jews in Israel today are either that were born in Israel, but they are either children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren of Jews that came from Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, Persia, Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Turkey, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, etc., which are all in the Middle East. And so even the music that we listen to, the food that we eat, the type of culture, the fact that I speak with my hands, those are all very non-Eastern European cultural traits.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Brent?
Awesome. That was really cool. And also, thank you so much, Jane, for clarifying. I didn't even know about that as it relates to the Church of Latter-day Saints. So I'll make sure moving forward that I recognize that you all are a separate entity, not Mormonism. But I would say, to answer your question, the biggest misconception about the Christian faith is that it is a works-based salvation. And what I mean by that is many people believe that in order for you to receive salvation in this Christian faith, it's a two-step process, which is first, believe in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior, and then two, do good works. Well, the first is correct, but the second is not. And I will say, one of the reasons people have asked me this all the time, why does the Christian church have so many different denominations? It's because, unfortunately, we don't all agree. So that's why we've had Methodists and Baptists and Pentecostals and Presbyterians and so on and so forth. So the one thing that we agree on is that Jesus is Lord, period. Romans 10:9 tells us that if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord, you will be saved. As it relates to it not being a works-based salvation, the Apostle Paul tells us in Ephesians 2, verses 8-9, for you were saved by grace, not of works, so that no man could boast. So the problem that we see is a lot of people say, hey, I want to come to Jesus, but let me get myself together first. Let me make sure that I stop drinking and stop cussing and stop doing all these other things. When the reality is our belief is that's the beauty of what we call the gospel. The truth of the matter is on your own, it'd be very difficult for you to get all those things together. And that's why we need Jesus, because he helps us in those instances. So again, the biggest misconception is that it's a works-based salvation. Now, to bring clarity to that, some may be saying, well, then if that's the case, then why should I do all of these good works? The Bible also tells us that if you be faithful over a few things, he'll make you ruler over many. The core of our Christian faith, that this is not the end. This life here on earth is simply temporary. When we die, there is another life, and it's an eternal life where God makes a new heaven and a new earth, and we're with God the Father, we're with God the Son, we're with God the Holy Spirit. And even as Jane talked about, we receive our resurrected body, this perfect body with no sickness, no disease, the things that we have to deal with in this earth, having to deal with hurt, having to deal with pain, having to deal with suffering, having to deal with paying bills, because most of us don't like doing that either. We don't have to deal with any of those things because he's created this new heaven, this new earth, and we get to reign with him for eternity. So the biggest misconception, again, is that our faith is not a faith where you have to work for your salvation. Jesus loved you so much, John 3:16, that God the Father gave his one and only begotten Son to die on the cross for your sins. So as a result of that, the penalty of your sins, all the unrighteous acts and all the unrighteous things that you've been done, that's already been bought and paid for with a price. You, my friend, just simply have to confess and believe that Jesus is Lord, and you will be saved.
How convenient.
Thank you. Omar, Representative or Imam Omar, thank you.
So when it comes to misconceptions, like, Rabbi Bayo, there's a bit too many to cover, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. And I'll try to basically just mention a couple that I think are kind of integrated, which are very similar to Bayo. Number one is that Allah is a different God than the Christian or the Jewish God that is mentioned in the monotheistic faiths, or that we have come to worship something new, and that Allah is not God. Well, Allah is just an Arabic word that means God. You know, if you open up a Christian Bible that is in Arabic, you will see Allah on every single page. Allah, Allah, Allah. It really is just a Semitic word, similar to Hebrew or Aramaic, where they sound similar. Elohim, Ilaha, Allah. These words have, you know, their cousin or sister languages, right? So they have different ways. Allah comes from Ilah, which is an Arabic word, which means deity. So Allah is the deity. The deity that, again, that you know, Rabbi Beo was even mentioning, is unlike creation, is inconceivable to our imagination. And in fact, there's a really cute phrase that, you know, kids memorize when it comes to teaching them theology. Kul ma khatar ala barik, Allahu khilafu dhalik. That anything that comes to your imagination or your whims, God is other than that. That God is not something that can be subject to the analysis of a human mind, but God could be understood through experience, which is something that enters the spiritual realm of Islam. So when we say that Arabic or Allah is the Arabic term for God that is mentioned or that is used, we also then come to this another stereotype that all Muslims are Arabs and all Arabs are Muslims, which couldn't be further from the truth. I think when most people see me, they're like, wait, you're Muslim? You, white guy, you're Muslim? And I have to tell them, yes, I'm Muslim. Yeah, I am. And, you know, and not to, you know, fulfill a stereotype, I am Arab. So that just happens to be a pure coincidence. But nonetheless, when it comes to Muslims and Islam, you know, every language that you can probably conceive of, there's a Muslim that speaks it at a native level, right? That they were born in that with that language. Every ethnic background, every culture that you can possibly think of, you know, then there are Muslims that come from that identity as well. You know, and even when it comes to how Muslims revere God, when they say His name, you know, they say it in different languages. For instance, a very famous thing that comes in Persia and in Central Asia and in East Asia is a term called Khuda Hafiz, you know, which is may God preserve you or may God bless you and keep you safe. And this is, again, another way that Muslims simply are their own identity, their cultural identity. Their religion does not remove their culture, right? So, you know, Rabbi Beo was mentioning this. Jews that even come from other areas, they're going to have their own offshoot ethnic identity. You know, we are Sephardic Jews or Ashkenazi, right? There are some that are European. There are some that are from different places in the world. Likewise with Muslims. You have Muslims who relate their faith with each other, right? Their faith is what binds them together, but their ethnic backgrounds, their culture, their food, their history, their language is going to be very different, and it's going to cause a different expression of faith, you know, in certain intricacies. So I really think that that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions, is that it's a Middle Eastern religion. You know, it's a religion for Arab-speaking Middle Easterners and no one else. You know, at our mosque in Tempe, we have over 85 different languages spoken. And that means 85 different identities. That means 85 different cultures. You know, that means dozens and dozens of ethnicities. And I have to constantly shift with all of these sensibilities in the room, right? Which it becomes very difficult and very challenging, but equally, if not more beautiful, is that, you know, really you see a variety of humanity all in one place, you know, worshiping in the same way. And, you know, still maintaining their own individual sense of identity.
Thank you very much. That's great. And for our panel today, I really wanted to create an opportunity for our audience, and as we replay this out to the chamber and the public, for them to have opportunities to connect with the various faith groups here. I know there are practices that are meant for members of the faith or congregation, but there are also connections to the public with each of the organizations. Can you share if you have a couple of sort of open to the public events you have coming up, maybe in the next few months, half one of next year, so that folks could, you know, join in those. And Jane, I'll kick it off with you.
All right. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. All right. So we, you know, COVID season, obviously we're not doing perhaps the celebrations we'd be doing normally in Christmas. Usually we have celebrations that are obviously open to the public. But one thing that we do every Christmas is a campaign called Light World. And this is simply a calendar of events that people are encouraged to do of whatever faith. And you can see here that if you text this number, if you text light to this number, you'll get a reminder every day. Some examples are today on the 3rd, help others as Jesus did, post a picture or video to social media that brings you calm. You can go down to 12th where it says Jesus cared for his community, support a local business, make a holiday purchase, buy a gift. So we really love this event simply because it offers opportunity for any age and any faith or non-faith of people to get involved. My very favorite scripture of all time, I love the book of Isaiah. It's my favorite, but my favorite is Isaiah 61:3, which says, God can give us beauty for ashes. And I think we are probably all in accord that 2020 has offered some ashes this year, and we'd love to end with some beauty. And I know as we serve other people and serve our community that God will make that happen. The other thing I wanted to say, which is just available all the time, is as a gift to the community, our church has put together a website called justserve.org. If you go on that website, you will go in here and you can click in your community name and push search. And we have local volunteers that have gone to all the nonprofits in the area, and it pulls up all of these different opportunities to serve. And you can search with different criteria if you want something that you can do from home, if you want to do something with a youth group. This is an opportunity that's available all the time for our community to go on and help one another out. And so we love Just Serve, and we hope that the community will use that resource.
Thank you very much. All right, Rabbi Bayo.
So, first of all, anything we ever do as the JCC, it's always open to anyone, period. No buts, no ifs, no question asked. Anything that we do is always open to any member of any faith or of no faith. To learn more about what we do, you can go on evjcc.org, and over there you can, if you want, you can sign up on our newsletter or just check the website regularly to see all of our programs that currently are online. Mostly online. We have some programs here in person, but mostly online. Again, open to anyone, evjcc.org. In addition, you can go to any religious service in any synagogue at any point in time, and you will be welcomed. There are no religious services that are for members only. Everybody is always welcome to visit a synagogue, to participate. I mean, maybe now during COVID is more difficult, but in normal times, any synagogue will welcome you, and hopefully will make you feel that they are happy that you're there to learn or to participate at whatever level you want. Having said that, as I mentioned earlier, we are having a Hanukkah celebration, a virtual Hanukkah celebration on December 17th. And so you can follow us on Facebook, or also I believe that we will broadcast it through the city of Chandler. So you can either follow us on the city of Chandler, and it will be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Brent?
Awesome. And again, I just want to say thank you guys so much for allowing me the opportunity to share. So we've got two major events that are actually coming up at Cornerstone. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, one of the big events that we do every year is what's called Harvest Fest, which is around Halloween, where we've got rides and music and food and all that stuff. We couldn't do it. But instead, from December 14th through the 18th, and I put a link in the chat, we're doing something really cool called Whoville. Not sure if you guys are fans of Dr. Seuss and the Grinch and all that good stuff, but it's open to the community, the entire community. The reason why we're doing it over 5 days is from 14th to the 18th, because we want to make sure that we're following CDC guidelines. But we're going to have tents set up. There's going to be free food, candy, popcorn, movies, a Christmas tree lighting every single night. It's just going to be a ton of fun. So you can invite your friends, your family, your kids. It gives them something to do. It gives the entire family something to do. And again, it is 100% free, doesn't cost you a thing. Come out to the campus and just have a good time. And then the other thing that we do, of course, Christmas, again, is a big deal in our faith. So this year we have 6 different Christmas services planned on both December 23rd and December 24th. You can click on the link and see those different times. But during the service, of course, you'll hear about the story of why we celebrate Christmas. But then after that, it's always a great time. Again, Arizona, this is my first year being here. I didn't realize that this was the hottest place in the world. 120 degrees this summer nearly killed me. However, I mentioned that to say one of the cool things that we do is we actually, me being from Detroit, Michigan originally, we bring snow, real snow on campus. So if you have kids or grandkids, you can bring them. They can come with their sleds. They can have a snowball fight, and we serve hot chocolate and s'mores and all that good stuff. So again, you don't have to be Christian. Just come, have a good time, hear the message, and have some great fellowship.
Thank you very much. Imam Omar.
Yeah, so like many of us, in this COVID time or this time of social distancing, it's very difficult for us to gather. But what we do have is that we still have some of our prayer services observing social distancing. Particularly now in the cooler weather, it's not 120 degrees out. So we're keeping the windows open, having the ventilation on, and everyone is 6 feet apart while they're engaging in the religious observances that people can do. The beautiful thing about Islam actually is that you don't even need to really go to a mosque. Except for Friday prayers, if that's even in your vicinity. It can be a very individualist faith where your expression and your religious observances are done at home. So many Muslims are taking advantage of that, and the mosque is really just a kind of a place to congregate and feel a sense of community. So some of the things that we have right now is that we have our Friday congregational prayers that we do at 12:30 and 1:30. If anyone would like to come, you're more than welcome to. We also are doing mosque tours because it is a historical landmark in the city of Tempe because of its architectural design. The mosque in Tempe near ASU we do tours. You email us, you schedule something with us at a particular time, and any, I guess you say, reservations that you might have of not getting too close to people or something like that, we try to work it out as best as we possibly can. In terms of any big events, we're really cautious about doing those types of gatherings, just because if you know anything about Muslims culturally, particularly in this country, is that for every 5 Muslims, 6 of them are doctors. So they're all medical professionals, and they're not going to be okay with these types of gatherings going on. And if we have comedians in the world today who are saying, I went to my doctor and he said cough and face Mecca, you kind of get this understanding that, wow, there's a lot of Muslim doctors, man, what's going on over here? So we definitely have a very concerted effort at making sure that we gather for those who are, number one, are willing, and number two, at a very limited capacity. Everything that we do have a program for currently, there's a cap, and even then there's very strict rules about social distancing. So I'm going to put the link of our website into the chat. And if anyone follows us on Facebook or on YouTube, which is the Islamic Community Center of Tempe, you can tune into our congregations through YouTube or Facebook, or even on Instagram. So we're doing a lot of social media outreach in that sense. Every Thursday night, actually. So tonight at 8:30, we go over some of the narrations that are attributed to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And we're actually coming close to finishing something, a book of 40 principles of faith. And if you want to get some information about Islam, you're more than welcome to tune in and watch. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Peggy.
I gonna echo the challenges of being during the time of COVID-19, and that has indeed dampened some of our efforts. We have had a junior youth empowerment program, which is basically to encourage junior youth to be their best selves and realize that they have choices, so they can decide if they want to make destructive choices or if they want to make choices that help both themselves and others. We've also had neighborhood children's classes, which focus on virtue development. And we've had study circle classes that focus on spiritual concepts such as life after death. The first two have been very challenging to be able to continue with during this time. So we'll probably start those up more when we can actually be with people. But we do have devotional meetings that are held on Zoom. Basically, we believe a lot of the problems today are spiritual problems. That in society, if you think about it, we have the civil rights laws, but many people decided it didn't change their hearts. And if it doesn't change their hearts, then they have found covert ways of holding on to their prejudices. And actually, one of the things I discovered is in 2010, there were since 2010, there used to be 600 hate groups, and now there's like over 1,000. And it's like, that is so sad. And obviously some people have become emboldened over the last several years. So we want to change people's hearts because of the fact we want to work toward this elimination of prejudice. One of the things, just kind of an aside, I find when you spend time with people who are different than you first of all discover they're actually a lot more alike you than you thought. But it also allows you to give you an opportunity to see the perspective and challenges that other people face. So with kind of that direction, one of the things that we want to do is to kind of address those concepts. So we have a race amity devotional. So how people become friends. It's done on a bi-weekly basis. It's on Saturday, 11 to 1 o'clock. The next one is scheduled for December 7th, and the one after that is December 21st. You actually will be receiving information on the Zoom link on that. On December 12th, we have a program called The Native Americans Then and Now. That'll be a talk by Dr. Joel Arona, who, by the way, is actually a very good speaker. I highly recommend it. That'll be, like I say, December 12th at 11 o'clock on Zoom. And then you just missed, so you can come to the next one. It was last night. We had a monthly devotional called Social Justice Interfaith Devotional. The next one on that will be January 6th. It's from 7 to 8 p.m. So it's on a Wednesday. And the last one was on respect, and this one will be on truthfulness.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So with that kind of concludes our questions for the panel today. We'll hop in and grab a few questions out from the audience. We had a couple come in through our channel here, and we'll hop in. I think one topic or question area that came up that maybe we can each touch on is in this COVID environment. And I think as we see a lot of coping mechanisms that people have had with stress, we've seen sort of an increase in, we'll say, substance abuse, intoxicants. And especially a lot of our employers here in the chamber have, expressed some concerns that they've seen this on the rise. What can be the significance or role of faiths in sort of like combating this overall trend, and what can we take from that?
Alberta. I have visited David and his wife Kirsten.
We can start with Rabbi Bayo.
Definitely, this has been a tough time for everybody. I'm sure that everybody knows somebody that either was infected with the virus, or people that maybe even perished because of the virus. I myself know many people that unfortunately passed away because of the virus, both in this country and in other countries. It's been really hard, especially for people that live alone. Especially it's been really hard from what I can tell, for teenagers that are so used to interact constantly with their friends. The issue of substance abuse, unfortunately, faith and religion, they are not, in my opinion, the answer to all. We can rely on our faith, and in particular in Judaism, on our practice and community. I think it's more important than just faith. Faith can lead us in wonderful directions, but it can also mislead us into places that we don't want to be. I think that the most important thing in these times, what we have discovered, is the power of community. Whether we do believe in God or we don't believe in God, the most important thing is the power of community. Even just the ability to reach out to somebody by picking up the phone and say, "How are you?" Just those 3 words can change a person's day. And that is what I think that, from our perspective, from my perspective, both as a rabbi and as the CEO of the JCC, that is what is the most important, is community. So to try to be there for everybody, even with the small steps.
Thank you. And other panelists, do you have any thoughts on this too? Omar.
Yeah, to second that, in Islam, as central as our faith is to our being and to our core, we still recognize that we are mind, body, soul, and we have our own needs that necessarily faith isn't something to rely on. Faith may be a peg. It may be something that assists someone in getting over a particular trauma or a particular crisis, but it is not the end-all be-all. We do not believe in praying illnesses away, although prayer is part of our healing process through illness and through disease, or even through struggle. We are not fatalists, if that makes sense. We do not say that, oh, God will do what he does and God will unfold things and that is all I can do. I don't have a part. We truly do believe in putting our best effort forward, and what that also might mean in many instances, such as where we are now, is to seek counseling, is to seek, professional care and professional help. Of course, even that, sometimes we fall into an extremism and think, as long as I'm seeing a counselor or a therapist, then I'm good. It doesn't even end there. Like the rabbi was saying, is that we also have to have a sense of community. If I have a sense of empathy in a counseling session where someone is speaking to me, what use is it? It's not going to have much of a prolonged effect if I then go back into my loneliness every time I leave that session. So creating avenues for community, be it virtual, be it in person, any way for someone to reach out and to communicate and to simply share their baggage is actually quite cathartic and quite healing in and of itself. And if that can be done in a place where people are not only physically interacting and having a sense of community, but there's also good diets and good habits that are being implemented, and then also good practices of faith and good works, then these things come together as a very cohesive, a cohort of really bringing something good to someone's life. So, in Islam and in our own Muslim communities all over the country and indeed all over the world, there's been a lot of struggles with this, but really, it's definitely even increased people's appreciation for their own families. We've definitely had to even take something that I've really come across a lot is people have really re-examined their lives and asked themselves, if they were miserable, are they truly miserable? And if they were happy, am I truly happy with what I have and with who I'm with? And in more instances than not, happily, in our community at least, and in the communities that I'm with, is that there was a surge of an interest in divorce, but then a dip in people actually filing for divorce. So I found that to be a very great success, where people probably struggled at the very beginning of the COVID, isolation and the social distancing and working from home, because they had not been doing so. But through, again, practical measures of getting a couples therapist or so on and so forth, then we had a lot of people reassess what it is that was important to them. And, you know, again, this is something that is, I guess you say, a very small victory compared to the larger scale of what's going on. But still, we have a lot of practical measurements to take as we heal and as we come to a relief of this virus and of the pandemic. And it's not only a physical illness that has caused and proliferated, it's also affected a lot of people mentally as well. So we ask that healing and blessings can be on our way and be coming towards us with our effort that is reaching out to get them. As we Muslims say, inshallah, God willing.
Hey, Tyler, just to jump in really quickly, and I agree with most of what both of my brothers said. One of the things that we also recognize outside of prayer is, as Omar mentioned, of course, counseling. And I think some of the reasons why people don't go to counseling is because there's a heavy cost to it from time to time. So what I ended up, I just sent a link from cornerstoneaz.com/care. That's our care ministry. We actually offer free counseling. So and our counselors are licensed, they're well equipped. I don't know all the details because I don't work too much in that ministry. I think at a certain point, depending on how much counseling you get, I don't know if we charge or not, but I know initially we do offer some free counseling. So if anybody needs it, if you know anyone that needs it, that resource is available.
Thank you for sharing.
And I'll just add, I know, you know, having a child that is full care, to go from him attending school and having a one-on-one aid from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., going to 7 months of him not being in school and not being able to have providers come in my home. I understand, you know, critically what the stress is like in terms of removing a lot of community resources. And community has been the word that we all have said over and over. The thing that it comes down to me is, do we know our neighbors? Are we checking in with our family? There's not a lot of ways in which people could help me deal with the stress I was having other than to be a listening ear. And I think that's what God wants us to do. Within our congregations, we have a program called the Ministering Program, where 2 women and 2 men are assigned different families and they minister to them, which simply means they check in. They know what's going on in their family. They are a listening ear. They help get groceries. Can we be ministering brothers and sisters to everyone in our community? And the answer is yes. And like many have said, I think it's caused us to reevaluate how well we know the people around us, and to evaluate what is my capacity to enact change and enact good. So I hope that those that are struggling, that we can be the people that reach out to those that are struggling. Our church also has an addiction recovery program. I'm sure that part of that has gone to online, but I know they are starting to meet in person sometimes, socially distanced, simply because those very specific needs have very specific communities that can help them advance. So that's also an option from our church as well.
And if I can add maybe the last point here, like I actually want to agree with my brothers and sister here as far as the whole concept of the importance of community and reaching out. I will suggest that one of the things that we do in these devotionals is we focus on the positive and hope, because the fact, I think a lot of times people, and right now it's hope is we actually do have some hope. There is a vaccine on the horizon, but it's taken us a long time, and I think that's been very difficult for us. The other thing though that I think is also very helpful is actually, I'm going to tell you Zoom, because of the fact you can call somebody up and you get a certain amount of connection, and that helps. And I absolutely, reaching out to people, I think, has been an important element of keeping people sane. But the other part of it, I think, is also when you can see somebody else, you actually feel closer. I'm a hugger, so I miss that physical contact. But on the other hand, at least when I can see you, I feel as if it's one step closer. And so I think that that's also been a way to cope during these times.
Thank you very much. All right. Well, we are right getting down to time, so I did want to take a moment to kind of wrap up today. Again, thank all of our panelists today for taking time out. I think we learned quite a bit about different faith traditions in Chandler. For those listening throughout the session, we will obviously post the recap, the recording. We'll also highlight and flourish all the websites that were shared in our chat. So by no means view the end of our presentation today as the end of your exploration of all the different faith communities that we talked about today. I think we all heard the very common things amongst all the different faith traditions. In particular, what stood out to me was even in the celebration portion of a holiday, we saw an intense focus on discipline, sacrifice, and service to others. And really, in that sense, we know how much emphasis is placed on community and the well-being of others. So again, thank you to every member of these faiths for all they do in the community. I think it's very important for us to recognize that, and especially how important that is in these trying times, that we have organizations dedicated to the goodwill of the public, and really, despite all the differences that exist between faiths, have that central emphasis and focus. And I think we also heard that the identity of different religions has been defined sometimes by misconceptions or perceptions. And really taking the time to inform ourselves and get to know a little bit more about the different faith communities that are out there gives us an opportunity to break down some of those misconceptions. And we have such a wonderful panel of ambassadors today that I think would be willing to continue your education and provide you a lot of resources to better understand their faiths. So again, want to take a moment to thank all the members of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Board, without which we could not organize panels like this. As well to our partners at the Chamber, in particular, Carly Hankins, who has been super helpful in organizing, setting up invites, running our show and programming. We are eternally grateful for all her efforts. To Terry for sponsoring us and making sure that this remains an emphasis here in our business community. And then again, to thank our sponsors, PayPal, Toyota Financial, Intel, and Wells Fargo. And with that, we will conclude today. We will be posting a recap or recording of the meeting, as well as flourishing the information from our chat. So again, thank you to everyone today, and you go out and have a great day and a great month. Bye, everyone.